I'm happy to introduce to you Joe Ruxton, an environmentalist, a producer of the profound documentary Plastic Ocean. In addition, she's a co-founder of Plastic Ocean Foundation, and today we will find out a little bit more of her life and work in general.
Welcome, Joe. It's my pleasure to meet you today.
My pleasure to be here.
So first of all, I would like to ask you, how did you first start your global environmental projects?
I've been working for a long time at the BBC, making underwater documentaries, including the first Blue Planet series. And as we were travelling around, and as somebody who's been diving for 30 years, I was concerned about what was happening in the marine environment, and that the BBC was showing the marine environment as if there was no problem with it, as if there was no pollution, no coastal development, no overfishing. And I thought we were sending the wrong message. I wanted to make an environmental film, and when I heard about and recognised the problem of plastic, I thought that would be the best one to do, because with plastic, the whole problem is based on the perception that plastic is disposable, and plastic was designed to be indestructible. So it was this crazy notion that we were making single-use items out of it, and they were ending up in the ocean and getting into the food chain. So that was my first stab at an environmental film.
As I understood, most of your influences were negative, but was there any positive influences that you had? Like, for example, I don't know, maybe your attraction to the environment or something like this?
Well, I've always loved being underwater, and when you are making a film about that, you need to compare, you need to let people know what's at stake. Certainly working with the BBC, I got to go to some of the most incredible places in the world, places I'd only ever dreamed about diving. And as somebody making a film like that, you're often given exclusive access to them. One of them that I can think about was in the Red Sea. It's a very, very well-known wreck, and that wreck is normally covered with divers. But we were given the exclusive chance to dive on it during the day and to do a night dive on it, and they kept all the other divers away. And you can't buy an experience like that. So the things I've seen, the places I've been to, Antarctica, for example, working with the Royal Navy, so being taken by helicopter to penguin colonies and seeing everything. And yes, again, the BBC provides all of the equipment that you need, so you don't get cold. It's a real privilege to work for an organisation like that and to have the access to the places I've been to. But at the same time, I felt we had a duty to tell the right story, and that people needed to be given that sort of credibility, let them understand, let them decide, because I think if people knew what the problem was, they wouldn't continue to throw plastic away as if it was a disposable item. And I think that's been proven now by the popularity of the film and the way companies like the BBC are now making films about it too, because people want to know more. And why shouldn't they know more?
Sure. Thank you very much.
Were you worried that people would not listen to what you had to say?
Yes. I was, because particularly as the BBC had said nobody's going to watch that film. Also, it took a very long time to make. It was 8 years. And during that time, I spent a lot of time with no money at all. I actually had to move out of my house and rent it out. And people said to me, Joe, you've done your best. That you've got to get a proper job. You can't go on like this. And I wasn't sleeping. I was very worried about it. But at the same time, I was determined to finish it, because I felt that if we could get this message out there, then things would change. And it was very hard, but I'm glad I stuck at it. And I think that there is a change in attitude now, and I'm not in any sense taking credit for that, but so many people are on board with it now who have done their own programs, who have got their own campaigns, and it's been a growing awareness, which I think is fantastic, and I'm glad I didn't give up.
You devote massive amounts of time trying to raise awareness of this quickly escalating problem. And in your movie, Plastic Ocean, you expose the ways in which toxins carried by microplastics are being ingested by fish and then make their way up to our food chain and basically are being deposited in our bodies. You also try to raise awareness of this problem through educational programs. So I just wanted to ask you, what is basically the response of a younger generation to environmental topics in general?
The younger generation have been amazing. And that is really what gives me the hope to carry on. Because even when things were difficult making the film, I was still doing a lot of work with kids. Now people, the older generation, let's say anybody from sort of 30 upwards, we've grown up with single-use plastic. It's such a convenient thing in our lives. We don't think about it. We just use it. And we don't want people to stop it. It is absolutely everywhere. Younger generation have got everything ahead of them, they soak up information very quickly and they're very determined. And I'll give you a story which to me brings all of this into focus. And it was at a primary school I was talking to. I did an assembly for them. And at the end of the assembly, the catering manager of the school came up to me and said, look, I'm not going to stop selling plastic water bottles because it brings in a profit of £10,000 a year and I need that. And I wanted to start saying, but, you know, what price do you put on the ocean and the future of the planet? And I could tell that, you know, sometimes people aren't listening. However, I got a call from the teacher the following term saying that since that talk, not one child had bought the water from the school shop. So that's the children saying, you might not care, we do. We're going to inherit this. We are the next guardians of the planet. So we're going to do what we can now. And also a teacher brought ice creams at the end and the kids are going, yay, ice cream. And they opened it and every one was in a novelty plastic cone and every child refused the ice cream, which I think, these are primary kids, because they care enough. They are the best ambassadors. The young people today, if they take the time to understand it, and then they really grasp it. And the places that I've been to when we were filming, places where communities have no waste management and everything they import is wrapped in plastic and they have nowhere to put it. The sickness levels are very high, all kinds of critical disease. The kids are burning the plastic, the people are burning the plastic. They are literally drowning in it.
But isn't burning the plastic bad for the environment?
Very bad for it, yes, because of the cancerous gases that are given off.
Can't really get rid of plastic by burning it.
No, you can't. You can't. Not, and particularly that type of burning at very low temperature. And looking at those places, I had the feeling that if we don't get our addiction to single-use plastic under control, this is like a premonition of what the whole planet will look like, and it will creep up on us. Because I think about, diving sort of 35 years ago, it was unusual to find plastic. But now you expect to do it. You take a net bag with you to put stuff in, and that's been a gradual increase. And when you're driving and look out at the hedgerows, particularly when they've come along and cut them back, you see all the plastics that's there, and it's been a gradual increase. And we're going to get to the stage, if we're not careful, where it's everywhere and we can't cope with it, and we have to stop now. And children understand that, and young people understand that.
So what do you think will happen in 35 years' time? Ahead, I mean.
Well, I would like to think that this will be something that we look at as the plastic era. We didn't understand. Now we do. We were told it was disposable. Nobody questioned where does it go when you throw it away. Nobody said, but hang on, it's indestructible. We can't make single-use items out of it. I thought it would take about 30 years to get this message across, and I started 10 years ago. And I am amazed by how people are on board with it now, how producers are coming up with alternatives, how new businesses are growing from it. The awareness is incredible, and I really have a lot of hope for the future. And I think when paleontologists look at all the layers of rock in the years to come, ours is going to be this plastic layer, and they'll think, what were they doing? And kids in the future will say, what do you mean you were making stuff out of something that was indestructible and you used it once and threw it away? What were you thinking? And that's how I think now. What were we thinking? But we all did it.
There is this organization called Four Oceans, right?
Yes.
What do you think
with the
about
bracelets, right?
with the bracelets. Yeah. So each bracelet basically sponsors 2 pounds of plastic being get.
It's a business. It's not a charity, and they're using virgin plastic to make the bracelets.
Are they reusing the plastic that they basically
collect?
No.
So you think that they're not so efficient?
I don't think that it's not so efficient. I think it's a marketing tool.
It's a marketing tool.
Yes.
Because I heard that it got actually quite popular within the
Well,
younger
they've made a lot of
generation.
money out of it because people think they're saving the oceans by buying the bracelets.
And so it's quite sad. So.
There's a lot of people getting onto the bandwagon who are using this to make money. And yes, you can make money out of things. New businesses that are looking at alternatives make money out of it. Why shouldn't they? But I don't think you should be making money telling people you're saving the oceans when actually you're just buying bigger and bigger boats.
What about the government? Like, for example, the government of UK, is he doing anything to protect the environment?
UK is actually starting to lead. They were very slow to get on board with it, and I spoke in a lot of governments before I actually started talking to people in the UK government, and they were talking about saying, yes, we'll do this by 2025 or 2040. Now, they've really picked up the pace, and other governments are looking to see what the UK will do next. So I'm pleased with the progress. And a lot of people think that governments are bad, governments are slow, they've got too many other things on. There's an element of truth in that. But with this topic, people, I think, suddenly get it and say, of course, we've got to do something. Microbeads, microplastics in toothpaste and cosmetics and that kind of thing. Who knew they were made out of plastic? And if you tell a politician that, it's like, they're plastic? Of course we've got to legislate against it. And some are slower. Europe, America have been pretty quick in that.
Well, Germany, because I'm half German, so I'm
Germany's very, very ahead of the game in many ways. I'll come back to that though, because just one more thing about these microbeads is the products that are already out there, they still need to sell them. So what they're doing is flooding the markets in Asia because they haven't legislated against it. So we might have got rid of the problem here, but it's still going to get back into the ocean there. So it's like we've taken first steps. We need to close that whole process. Germany were very far ahead because in 1991 they brought in a packaging ordinance whereby packaging companies had to consider the end of life of the plastics that they were making. And so they brought in a closed-loop recycling system that they had to get on board with. So the more plastic you produced in your packaging, the more you'd have to pay for that plastic to be disposed of or turned into new plastic items. The only issue with it is that they've got so good at it and so good at, I mean, if you leave a plastic bottle on the street, somebody's going to get it because they've also got the machines that you put them into. But it's almost got to the stage where it's so good that people don't worry about it because they know that in the end it's going to be recycled. Well, actually, you can't keep recycling plastic. That's one of the problems with it. Aluminium, you can recycle thousands of times. You still get really good quality aluminium. Plastic water bottle, maybe 9 times, but it loses quality every time. So if you have this much plastic and you're recycling it, you'll get that much at the end, while you're still producing plastic at an exponential rate. So it's not the answer, and to me it's a last resort. After reducing, reusing, replacing, redesigning, rethinking, all of those.
But what about countries, for example, as big as India and China? They're like, the industries are growing really fast, and obviously plastic will help them to develop even faster. Mm-hmm. Do you think so, like, at the cost of losing, like, to competitors? And basically because, like, obviously, time, when you manufacture goods or anything, time is, like, the main component. So basically, if you don't use plastic, you lose some time. Would you say that they will be willing to accept the cost of like banning the plastic products and like using something instead? It will also cost them higher prices, of course. Mm-hmm. So what do you think about India and China?
I think there is a lot to be said for the work that's being done in India and China. In India particularly, they are the best recyclers, and there's a growing awareness now. I met somebody who'd been working in Mumbai. He'd grown up there. And he'd watched his favourite beach drown in plastic. And he took it on as one person to educate the local people, to go there and clean it up. He's a lawyer. Every weekend, he'd start on a Friday night, he'd be cleaning, and he gradually got people to do it. And I think it was last year for the first time the turtles came back and they stood on that beach. Yeah, he's the most amazing guy. I think people have to understand the power of one person, but everybody gets on board with it. There's a lot of work being done in India, and there's a lot of willingness to do something about it. China, I think, gets a lot of bad rap. People think that they don't care. They really do. And I think they're going to start to lead in this. They've already said no to everybody else's recycling because they don't want it. And everybody else is sort of in a bit of a backward tailspin. What are we going to do? But why should China take it all? They make enough of their own. They're looking at different manufacturers, and they're very open to change and open to what they can do and understanding. And we've recently had a film screening for 200 Chinese toy manufacturers. So the big ones like Mattel, 200 of the top ones came for a screening because they're interested to find out. And now they're starting to look at the way they package things differently. Because toys, particularly, every component's separately wrapped. It's got a little band that sticks it to the plastic bit, and then there's a big sort of bubble wrap over the top. Exactly. But they're looking at it now. You see, nobody thought about it. Nobody was talking about it. But if you tell these people, there's some really genius minds in China and India, and like the rest of us, nobody's thought about the problem that plastic is causing. Now we know so much is going to come, and I would not be surprised to see one of those countries leading the change.
I went this summer to Kolkata in India, mm-hmm. but I was actually terrified because I saw plenty of plastic everywhere on the street. I could
And you
barely
see
walk.
cows eating it, don't you?
It was
It's
terrifying.
this is not going to change overnight. This is going to get worse before it gets better, particularly with people like China saying no to other people's plastic. And I think Vietnam or Thailand, one of them has now said no more to other people's plastic either. It will not change overnight. There's too much infrastructure that's got to change. There's too much legislation. And I accept that it will get worse before it gets better. And even at the centres of the oceans, if we stop it now, there's still 20 years' worth of plastic making its way to the centres, because it takes about that long to get from the shores to the centres. And a lot of that's going to sink to the bottom, and we don't know the outcome of that. But I think it will change. And I think that in the future, we will look back on this and say, you know, what were we thinking? Thank goodness it's got better. Thank goodness we stopped when we did. But it's not going to be overnight.
Are there any inventions which we are not maybe like aware of? Like, which are not so well promoted, but that can make a change?
There's new inventions happening all the time. Are you talking about ways of dealing with waste plastic?
Maybe recycling plastic, maybe new types of plastic.
There's lots of new types of plastic coming onto the market all the time, and we're talking to some manufacturers now who are making plastic film from food waste that you'll be able to use in the food industry that will actually dissolve in seawater. And I think now that people know what the problem is, brilliant minds are going to start coming to make those solutions. And there's also, you know, the rings that go around cans, drink cans. They've now made one that's edible, that actually is food for turtles. So instead of them eating the plastic, there's edible cutlery being made. There's an awful lot. Once people know what the problem is, then they can work on it. And our job, and my job with the film, was to raise awareness. Because if you don't know about something, then how can you possibly care about it?
What about your foundation, Plastic Ocean? Can you tell us?
Plastic Oceans UK. Yes, it's been a long journey for us. The first 8 years, certainly we were concentrating on getting the funding to make the film and also getting out there to get the shots that we needed. And I will be talking about it later with the school and some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that you think, how do we ever get through it? So that was the sort of the main reason. We wanted to educate people. And when I say educate, I don't necessarily mean just formal education in schools. We're talking about educating governments, corporations, the public. And a film is a good way to shortcut that. And then when people start talking about it, it just puts the whole plastic subject into focus. But what we're doing now is we're working on education programs for schools, programs and resources that will fit with the curriculum, because plastic is still an extracurricular subject. So unless a school is well funded or has science clubs and everything, it doesn't fit with the subjects that we're doing. So we've been working with teachers to fit that subject into maths, English, geography, chemistry, physics, biology, design technology, so that there will be a lesson at least every side of half term to drip feed this information in. And we've been testing it in schools, and the kids and the teachers are very enthusiastic about it. So that's going to be launched very soon. And we've also been doing it with primary schools to fit in with the Crest Award system, and also to fit into the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So we're doing stuff that we know teachers will want to use, and it makes it very easy for them, because they'll get the PowerPoint presentation with film clips in. They'll get all the background resources. There'll be worksheets and fun things for the students to join in with. So that's one side of it. We're also working with businesses in a sustainability program, and we're keeping up with science as well, because science changes all the time. And if you want to change policy, you have to back it by peer-reviewed science. You can't just come out with a sensationalist statement and then one of the politicians says, well, how do you know that? And then you can't answer it. One of the classic one is there'll be more plastic than fish in the ocean by 2050, which has been very widely quoted. But how many fish are in the ocean? Nobody knows. Every time a sub goes down, you discover new species. So if you're going to come out with a statement like that, you've got to be able to back it with science. And we're keeping up with all of the new stuff. We've created one 80-page document, which is like a Bible for anybody who's doing this, yes. And we're going to be updating that as we go. And working with scientists in material science, in human toxicology and ecotoxicology, and any of the new stuff that's being done.
Sounds like a lot of hard work for it.
I never stop. It's exhausting. I need a holiday. But yeah, it's something, it's my passion, and I find it very difficult to switch off.
And technology, like developments in technology, do they help to solve this problem?
It can do. It depends how you look at it. One of the one of the sequences in our film shows something called pyrogenesis. Pyrogenesis is a way of using plasma technology to superheat plastic to 5,000 degrees. If you heat plastic on a bonfire, you get these dangerous fumes given off, the dioxins, which are carcinogenic gases. If you superheat it, the plastic turns into its original atoms, so you get carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. It goes beyond the stage where you get these nasty gases. Yeah, one of the things that are given off from it are water and carbon monoxide. The carbon monoxide is captured and fed into the system to fuel it. So when you first fire up the system, you have to use natural gas, but once you keep feeding it, it does it itself.
Why it's not yet implemented?
Because it's very expensive. There's a prototype. You'll see it being used on a ship, or we talk about the one that's being used on a ship, and American Navy ship, the newest aircraft carrier. They built the whole hull around one of these. But it is very expensive, and actually the narration in our film is incorrect, because the person leading the film says it's affordable. It really isn't. And I don't know how much investment has gone into it, but I would like to think that if things like that exist, then others will come to the fore as well. You never know.
But what if the cost, for example, decreased? Would you say people would use this technology more often?
I don't know, and I would say yes, and I would say the more that are made, the more the costs will come down. The problem is a plasma flame is only that big, so you couldn't use it to deal with London's waste.
Oh yeah, with tons, hundreds and thousands of tons of plastic.
Exactly. I mean, on a ship it's fine. Maybe if some of the small island nations that, again, we feature in our film, that it might be an answer for them, but they can't afford the money to start it. So I'm heartened by the fact that people are looking at this, that new technology is coming to light. I don't think that one's going to solve it, but we have to be very careful as well with something like that, because you don't want to get to the stage where you're solving it efficiently or turning it into fuel or whatever, and people think, okay, we can still continue using plastic like we have been, because there's the whole problem with climate change, which we don't even address in our film. Yes. The only answer to all of this is to stop using single-use plastic gratuitously. Stop over-packaging. Stop buying water. Thames water is one of the best in the country. People in America that import water from Fiji. Fiji doesn't even have enough for their own people, particularly when they have a cyclone and they get flooding. And that water is being sent off to these posh Fiji water bottles. The people in America that can get it out of their own taps are paying $4 for, because it's got a nice hibiscus on it and looks exotic. It's a mad marketing thing, and that's got to stop.
Which charities would you say that you believe the most? I mean, environmental charities. Because some people, for example, I don't know, like for example, Greenpeace. There were some articles which said that there was some examples of fraud and things like this. But is there a charity which you're 100% sure about?
Plastic Oceans UK. Absolutely, yes. No, there are some good ones, and I think different charities have different purposes. There's one that we've been working with, and I'm actually on their steering committee, called Thi.A, and they're brilliant campaigners, and we haven't had time to do a campaign. But they did one which is all about the cotton buds, which used to have plastic sticks and then cotton wool on either end, between their ears or whatever. And they go flushing down the loo. Why anybody would flush one of those down the toilet, I don't know. But they've managed to, they have a campaign called Switch the Stick. So the stick has been changed to a cardboard or a wooden one, which means even if somebody did decide to throw it down the loo, then it's not going to damage the environment. The other one that they've done is one about what you can flush down the toilet. It's the 3 Ps, pee, poo and paper. And it stops people flushing other things down there, that might have plastic on them, that sort of thing. So they had a big campaign about that, including people sitting on toilets outside Parliament houses reading a book. And everybody's taking pictures, but they're wanting people to talk to them so they can say why they're doing it. And we're doing it to tell people only 3 things should be put down the toilet. And it's been very effective because people, it's a bit risque. And everybody looks and thinks it's really funny.
And then they remember it.
Exactly. Mm.
So, before we basically terminate, is there anything else you would like to say to the audience about, or some projects you have, or maybe to mention something which you didn't mention yet?
I'd like people to go to our website, which is plasticoceans.uk. Then they will learn about the work that we're doing, and then if there's any questions that they have, they can ask us about it. They'll see the kind of campaigns that we're getting involved with and the work that we're doing, because the more people that know about it, the better. And obviously, if we run on we are a charity, so if people are able to direct us to sources of funding, then that's always very useful for us, because otherwise we can't keep going. But I wanted to ask you a question. Is this the time?
Yes. Perfect.
And what I'd like to ask you is, as young people who are about to start on your careers in the next few years, where do you see the priorities? What do you think about the mass use of plastic and the way it's been flooding the environment? What are your thoughts on that?